Keanu Reeves saw a chef chopping veggies at 3 a.m., then found out why he skipped college. A Hollywood legend walks into a dark restaurant kitchen at 3 in the morning wearing gray maintenance coveralls and worn work boots. His famous long hair is tucked beneath a baseball cap. Nobody recognizes him. Nobody even glances his way. But what he discovers in the flickering shadows will shatter everything he thought he knew about his own business. A young chef with hollow eyes and trembling hands is chopping vegetables alone in the darkness. A photograph taped to his workstation reads, "Mom and the last good day." And when the truth finally emerges, not a single person in that company will ever forget what happens next. This is not a movie. This is real life. Keanu Reeves had built an empire on instinct and compassion. 20 years ago, after wrapping his most grueling action franchise, he had opened the first Second Chance kitchen with nothing but a vision and a dream. He wanted to create something different from Hollywood. Something real. A place where good food met second chances, where struggling people could find honest work and dignity, where nobody was judged by their past but celebrated for their potential. Now, at 60, he owned 47 locations across the Midwest. The restaurant chain had become his passion project, a way to stay connected to ordinary people and prove that business could be built on kindness rather than exploitation. Every location bore his philosophy on the wall. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. But lately, something had been gnawing at him. Customer complaints were rising. Staff turnover was brutal, especially at the Cincinnati location. The quarterly report showed a disconnect he could not fix from his office in Los Angeles. Numbers told one story, but Keanu had learned over decades in Hollywood that the real story was always in the people. So he did what he always did when numbers stopped making sense. He went to see for himself. Nobody at the Cincinnati location knew Keanu Reeves by face. Without his signature long hair flowing freely, without the celebrity aura that followed him at premieres and press events, he was just another middle-aged man trying to blend in. Corporate had arranged everything through back channels. As far as anyone here knew, Mike Cooper was just another guy trying to make ends meet with a maintenance gig. Gray coveralls, worn brown work boots, a dark navy baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, his distinctive hair tucked carefully underneath. A clipboard in hand. Perfect camouflage. It was 2:47 in the morning on a Tuesday when Keanu pushed through the back door of the kitchen. His fake assignment was simple. Check the walk-in freezers for temperature fluctuations. Document any maintenance issues. His real mission was far more important. Figure out why this particular location was hemorrhaging employees faster than any other in the entire chain. Why the soul of this restaurant seemed to be dying. The kitchen should have been empty at this hour. The dinner service had ended at 11. The cleaning crew had finished by 1. Nobody should be here until the morning prep team arrived at 6. But it was not empty. Keanu heard it before he saw it. A steady, rhythmic sound echoing through the stainless steel silence. Twack, twack, twack. He followed the sound past the industrial dishwashers, past the prep stations, still smelling faintly of yesterday's garlic and thyme, until he reached the far corner of the kitchen where a single overhead light flickered like a dying heartbeat. There, hunched over a cutting board, was a young man, early 20s maybe, slim build, dark brown hair falling across his forehead in messy waves. His chef whites were spotless despite the ungodly hour, sleeves rolled precisely to his elbows. In his right hand, a santoku knife moved with mechanical precision. Twack, slicing through carrots, so uniformly they could have been measured with a ruler. Twack, creating perfect julienne cuts that would make culinary school instructors weep with pride. Thwack. Keanu stood there for a full minute, watching in silence. The young man never looked up, never paused, never reached for his phone or hummed along to music that was not playing. Just him, the knife, and an impossible mountain of vegetables that needed breaking down before dawn. There was something almost sacred about the scene, something that reminded Keanu of monks in meditation, of artists lost in creation. But there was also something deeply wrong. The young man's movements were precise, yes, but there was a hollowness to them, a mechanical quality that spoke of exhaustion so profound it had become autopilot. Hell of a time to be working, Keanu finally said, keeping his voice casual. The knife stopped mid-slice. The young man's head snapped up, eyes wide with the startled look of someone caught doing something forbidden. But then his face smoothed into something careful and polite. A mask, Keanu recognized. He had worn enough masks himself to know one when he saw it. Oh, hey. The young man's voice was soft, almost hoarse. You're the new maintenance guy, right? Mike. That's me? Keanu gestured at the cutting board with his clipboard. You always do prep at 3 in the morning. Someone's got to do it. The young man's name tag read Tyler. He returned to his carrots, though his movements were slightly less fluid now, aware of being watched. Day crew gets slammed during service. Tyler continued, not meeting Keanu's eyes. If I don't get this done, they start behind. Then they rush. Then quality drops. Then customers complain. Then corporate sends angry emails. Then everyone's stressed. He shrugged, as if explaining basic physics. So I do it now. When it's quiet. Keanu leaned against the prep table, studying him carefully. Tyler's hands were steady on the knife, but there was something hollow in his eyes. The kind of tired that sleep could not fix. Deep purple shadows had taken up permanent residence beneath those hazel eyes, like bruises that never healed. You pull the graveyard shift often? Keanu asked. Every night. Be choice. Tyler's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Be necessity. The answer hung in the air between them, heavy with things left unsaid. Keanu had interviewed hundreds of employees over the years, both as an actor understanding characters and as a business owner understanding his people. He had learned to read the silences. This was not burnout. This was not someone putting in extra hours hoping for a promotion. This was not ambition or dedication in any normal sense. This was something else entirely. Kitchen's dead this time of night, Keanu pressed gently. Can't be more than a handful of customers, if any. Why not work days when it's busier? Better tips if you're on the line during service. I like the quiet. Tyler finished the carrots and reached for a crate of bell peppers, his movements precise and practiced. But Keanu noticed his hands trembling slightly, not from cold, from exhaustion. Besides, Tyler added quietly, I'm not after tips. I just need the hours to be these hours. That's all. Keanu knew when to back off. He had learned that pushing too hard only made people retreat further into their shells. He nodded, made a show of checking his clipboard, and headed toward the walk. In freezer like that was what he had come for all along. But as he passed Tyler's station, something caught his eye. There, taped to the inside of the metal shelf beside the cutting board, was a photograph. Small, maybe 4 by 6 inches. The edges worn soft from being handled countless times. It showed a younger Tyler, high school age probably, grinning beside a woman with kind eyes and the same dark hair. They were at some kind of outdoor festival, cotton candy in hand, both laughing at something beyond the frame. The woman's arm was wrapped around Tyler's shoulders, and the love between them was obvious even in a faded photograph. Written in marker along the bottom, in handwriting that had begun to fade, Mom and the last good day. Keanu felt something twist deep in his chest. He understood loss. He had experienced more than his share of grief throughout his life. He knew what it meant to carry photographs of people who were no longer there to preserve moments that could never be recreated. He knew the weight of those 5 words, the last good day. What had happened after that day? He had built Second Chance Kitchen on a simple philosophy. Good food starts with good people. But somewhere along the way, in the spreadsheets and expansion plans and quarterly projections, he had lost sight of what good people actually meant. They were not numbers on a productivity chart. They were not efficiency metrics to be optimized. They were stories, struggles, sacrifices, stories he would never see from his corner office in Los Angeles. Mike. Keanu turned. Tyler was looking at him now. Really looking. With an expression that was part wariness and part something else. Something that might have been hope, buried deep beneath layers of exhaustion. You seem different than most maintenance guys, Tyler said quietly. How so? You actually listen. Tyler wiped his knife on his apron, then immediately went back to chopping. But his voice was softer now, almost vulnerable. Most people don't. They just talk at you, or past you, or through you. But you actually listen. Keanu felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. How many Tylers were out there, working in the shadows of his empire, unseen and unheard? How many had he overlooked in his pursuit of expansion and market share? How many were chopping vegetables at 3 in the morning while carrying burdens nobody bothered to ask about? I'm just doing my job, Keanu said quietly. Yeah, Tyler smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. May 2. The conversation ended there, but Keanu could not shake the image of that photograph. The last good day. What had happened to the woman with kind eyes? What had turned a smiling teenager at a festival into a hollow-eyed young man chopping vegetables alone in the dark? Keanu finished his freezer inspection. Everything was fine, as he had suspected it would be. He headed for the exit, already planning his next moves. But before he left, he glanced back one more time. Tyler was still there, still chopping, still alone. The overhead light flickered, casting strange shadows across his gaunt face. Keanu made a decision right then and there. He did not know Tyler's story yet, but he was damn sure going to find out. Because something told him that whatever was keeping this young man in the kitchen at 3 in the morning was not ambition or dedication. It was desperation. And Keanu Reeves did not build an empire by ignoring desperation when he saw it. Keanu did not sleep after his shift ended at 6 in the morning. He went back to his hotel room, showered, and sat by the window watching Cincinnati wake up. The Ohio River glinted in the early morning light. Cars began filling the streets. People rushed to jobs they probably hated, lives they were probably just surviving. But Keanu's mind kept circling back to that photograph. The last good day. The way Tyler had moved through the kitchen like a ghost. The careful distance he kept from anything personal. The trembling hands. The hollow eyes. Keanu had learned over the years that the best truths came out over coffee, not interrogations. People opened up when they felt safe, not cornered. So when his next shift started at 2 in the afternoon, he made sure to time his break with Tyler's. The break room was a cramped space with flickering fluorescent lights, a coffee maker that looked older than Keanu's first restaurant, and a bulletin board covered in OHA regulations nobody ever read. The walls were that particular shade of institutional gray that seemed designed to drain hope from anyone who spent too long staring at them. Tyler sat alone at the corner table, a paper cup of black coffee cooling between his hands. He was not drinking it, just staring at it like it might contain answers to questions he was afraid to ask. Mind if I sit? Keanu asked, already pulling out the plastic chair across from him. Tyler glanced up, surprised. Oh, sure. Mike, right? That's me. Keanu sat down with his own coffee. It was terrible stuff. Burnt and bitter, the kind of coffee that tasted like disappointment. He took a sip anyway. So I gotta ask, Keanu said casually. You work graveyard, but you're here at 2 in the afternoon. What gives? Double shift today. Tyler's voice was flat, matter of fact, like he was reciting a weather report. Jimmy called in sick. They needed someone on prep. When's the last time you slept? I sleep. That's not what I asked. Tyler's fingers tightened around his cup. For a moment, Keanu thought he might shut down completely. Build that wall higher. Retreat behind the mask. But then something shifted in his expression. A crack in the armor. Small but real? Sunday? Tyler said quietly. I slept Sunday. 4 hours, maybe 5. Keanu felt his stomach drop. This was Wednesday. The kid had been functioning on 4 hours of sleep in 4 days. Tyler, that's not sustainable. You're going to burn out. Or worse. I don't have a choice. There it was again. That same phrase from the night before. Necessity. Not choice. Keanu leaned back in his chair, making himself smaller, less threatening. He had learned this trick years ago during character work. People talked more when you did not crowd them, when you gave them space to breathe. Why the night shift specifically? Keanu asked, keeping his voice gentle. I mean, if you need hours, day shifts have better opportunities. Tips during lunch rush. Chance to work the line when it matters. Build a reputation. I can't do days. Tyler cut him off, then seemed to realize how sharp his tone was. He softened, looking down at his untouched coffee. I just have responsibilities during the day. The night shift is the only one that works for my situation. Keanu studied him carefully. The dark circles under Tyler's eyes were even worse in the harsh fluorescent light. Deep purple shadows that spoke of exhaustion so profound it had become a permanent fixture of his face. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the coffee cup, though he still did not drink. Responsibilities. Keanu echoed. Family stuff? Tyler's jaw clenched visibly. Something like that? Look, I know we just met. Keanu paused, choosing his words carefully. But I've been around the block a few times, and I can tell when someone's carrying more weight than they should. If there's something going on, maybe I can help, or at least listen. For a long moment, Tyler said nothing. Then his eyes drifted to the break room door, checking to make sure nobody else could hear. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You ever have something you wanted? Really wanted? Something you dreamed about your whole life? Tyler's voice cracked slightly. And then life just took it away. Keanu thought about his own journey, the relationships that had crumbled, the people he had lost, the grief he still carried from losses that never fully healed. He understood wanting something desperately and having it snatched away by forces beyond control. Yeah, he said honestly. I have. Tyler nodded slowly, still not meeting his eyes. I got accepted to the Culinary Institute of America. Full scholarship. 3 years ago. He finally took a sip of coffee, wincing at the bitter taste. Best culinary school in the country. Maybe the world. I was going to be a real chef, not just some prep cook chopping vegetables in the dark at 3 in the morning. I was going to create. Innovate. Make food that meant something. Keanu's chest tightened. The Culinary Institute of America. That was not just any cooking school. That was the Harvard of the culinary world. A full scholarship meant Tyler was not just good. He was exceptional. What happened? Keanu asked quietly. Life. Tyler set down his cup with a soft click against the table. Life happened. Before Keanu could press further, the break room door swung open with a bang. Gordon Briggs, the head chef, stuck his red face through the doorway. He was a loud, aggressive man in his late 40s, balding with a beer gut that strained against his chef coat. His face was permanently flushed, either from the kitchen heat or the anger that seemed to simmer constantly beneath his surface. Mitchell! Break's over. I need those peppers done before dinner prep starts. Yes, chef. Tyler stood immediately, dumping his untouched coffee in the sink. Sorry, chef. But as he headed for the door, Keanu caught a glimpse of something in his expression. Not anger, not resentment, resignation. The look of someone who had stopped fighting because fighting had become too expensive. Someone who had accepted their fate, however unfair, because they had no energy left for anything else. Hey, Tyler, Keanu called out. The young man paused, hand on the door frame. That photo in the kitchen, the one on your shelf. Tyler's shoulders stiffened visibly. What about it? She looks like someone worth fighting for. Tyler's hand tightened on the door frame until his knuckles went white. For a second, Keanu thought he might say something. Open up. Let the truth spill out. Instead, Tyler just nodded once, sharp and quick, and disappeared back into the kitchen. Keanu sat alone in the break room, staring at his terrible coffee growing cold. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to Rachel Thompson, his head of HR. Need full employee file on Tyler Mitchell. Cincinnati location. Everything. Emergency contacts, employment history, all of it? Urgent. The response came back in seconds. On it, boss? Keanu finished his coffee in one bitter gulp. Something was very wrong here. Every instinct he had honed over years of studying human nature was screaming at him to dig deeper. Because Tyler Mitchell was not just tired, he was drowning. And Keanu was going to find out why. Keanu knew he was crossing a line. Following an employee home was not in any corporate handbook. It probably violated a dozen privacy policies and could easily be considered stalking. But as he sat in his rental car, 3 vehicles behind Tyler's beat, uptan Honda Civic on Route 70, 5 North, Keanu told himself this was different. This was about understanding the full picture. About seeing what the spreadsheets could never show him. At least that is what he told his conscience. It was Thursday morning, 6:15. Keanu had watched Tyler clock out after his shift, shoulders sagging with exhaustion so profound it seemed physical. The young man had walked to his car like someone wading through deep water, every step requiring conscious effort. Instead of heading home to sleep like any normal person after working all night, Tyler had gotten in his car and driven north. Away from Cincinnati, toward Dayton. The drive took 40 minutes. Keanu kept his distance, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with his own behavior, but unable to turn back. The employee file from Rachel had arrived late last night, and it had raised more questions than it answered. Tyler Mitchell, 20, 2 years old, no college education listed, despite getting that scholarship. Emergency contact Margaret Mitchell, mother. Address E1240, 7 Maple Street, Dayton, Ohio. The same address Tyler was heading to now. The neighborhoods changed as they drove. Cincinnati's industrial outskirts gave way to suburban Dayton. Modest houses with small yards. The kind of area where people worked hard and kept to themselves. Where American flags hung from porches and neighbors still borrowed cups of sugar. Tyler's Honda turned onto Maple Street, a quiet road lined with oak trees just starting to show their autumn colors. Red and gold leaves drifted across the pavement. Keanu parked 2 houses down and killed the engine. Tyler's house was a small ranch-style home. Pale blue siding with white trim. The yard was meticulously maintained. Grass cut precisely. Hedges trimmed with military precision. Not a single leaf out of place. Someone cared deeply about this house. Someone took pride in it even while clearly struggling to afford its upkeep. The paint was peeling near the gutters. One of the front windows had been repaired with duct tape. The driveway was cracked and patched multiple times. Keanu watched Tyler get out of his car, grab a grocery bag from the back seat. When had he even had time to stop for groceries? The young man moved with the slow, heavy steps of someone running on fumes. Pure willpower carrying him forward when his body had given up hours ago. The front door opened. Tyler disappeared inside. Keanu waited 5 minutes, arguing with himself. He knew this was wrong. Knew it absolutely. But something pulled him forward anyway. Down the sidewalk. Past the neighbor's house. Until he stood in front of 1240, 7 Maple Street. Through the large front window, the one without duct tape, he could see directly into the living room. What he saw made his heart stop. The room had been converted into a makeshift medical care facility. A hospital bed dominated the space, complete with rails and an adjustable frame. Medical equipment Keanu did not fully recognize sat on a rolling cart beside the bed. Oxygen tank, heart monitors, IV stands with bags of fluid, pill bottles lined up with military precision on a nearby table. And in the bed, propped up with pillows, was a woman. Margaret Mitchell. She was thin, far too thin. The kind of thin that spoke of months or years of illness. Dark hair streaked with gray was pulled back in a loose ponytail. A cervical collar braced her neck, holding her head in position. Her arms rested on top of the blankets, but something about the way they lay there motionless and precisely positioned, told Keanu they were not just resting, she could not move them. Tyler appeared in view, still wearing his work clothes from the restaurant. He set down the grocery bag and immediately went to his mother's side. Keanu watched as he adjusted her pillows with practiced care, checked something on one of the monitors, then disappeared into what must have been the kitchen. When he returned, he carried a bowl and a spoon. Keanu watched through the window, throat tight, as Tyler pulled a chair close to his mother's bed and began to feed her. Slowly, patiently, spooning what looked like oatmeal into her mouth, waiting for her to chew and swallow, then repeating the process. Margaret's head could move slightly. She turned toward her son, and even from the street, Keanu could see her smile, the kind of smile that said, "Thank you," and "I'm sorry," and "I love you," all at once. Tyler said something that made her smile wider. He was talking to her, keeping up a conversation, making her laugh even as he fed her breakfast one careful spoonful at a time. After a few minutes, he set down the bowl and picked up a water bottle with a straw, holding it steady while she drank. Then he checked her collar, adjusted her blankets, moved to the medical equipment and wrote something on a chart. Tracking medications, probably. Then Keanu saw Tyler check his watch, saw his shoulders slump with exhaustion so profound it was almost visible. Saw him run a hand through his hair in a gesture of pure, bone, deep weariness. But then Margaret said something. Keanu could see her lips move, and Tyler straightened up, painted on a smile that did not reach his hollow eyes, and nodded. He disappeared again, returning with what looked like a book. He settled into the chair beside her bed and began to read aloud. His mother's face relaxed into peaceful contentment as she listened to her son's voice. Keanu stepped back from the sidewalk. His vision was blurring. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. The night shifts, the exhaustion, the photograph labeled "The Last Good Day." The culinary school scholarship Tyler had turned down. This was not just a young man working hard to make ends meet. This was a son who had sacrificed everything to care for his mother, his education, his dreams, his entire future. Tyler worked all night at the restaurant so he could be home during the day, to feed her, bathe her, monitor her medications, do her physical therapy exercises, keep her alive and comfortable in the home she loved rather than some cold institution. He slept God knows when, if at all. He had been doing this for 3 years, alone. Keanu walked back to his car on unsteady legs and sat behind the wheel, gripping it hard enough to make his knuckles white. He had come to Cincinnati looking for answers about employee retention and customer satisfaction. Instead, he had found something that shattered every assumption he had ever made about success, sacrifice, and what it truly meant to be strong. Keanu pulled out his phone and made a call. "Rachel, it's Keanu. I need you to find out everything about Margaret Mitchell. Medical history, insurance coverage, care costs, everything. And I need it by tonight." There was a pause on the other end. "Boss, is everything okay?" Keanu looked back at the small blue house where a young man was reading to his paralyzed mother after working all night without sleep. "No," he said quietly. "But it's going to be." Keanu could not focus on his next shift. He had returned to the restaurant for his Friday evening maintenance duties, but his mind kept drifting back to that living room. The hospital bed, Margaret's smile, Tyler's exhausted devotion. The file from Rachel had arrived an hour ago, and it was worse than he had imagined. Margaret Mitchell had been in a car accident 3 years ago. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit her driver's side door at nearly 60 miles per hour. She had been on her way to the grocery store, a routine errand that had destroyed her life. Traumatic brain injury, spinal cord damage at C5 and C6. She had survived, but barely. The first 3 weeks had been touch and go, multiple surgeries, medically induced coma. When she finally woke up, the doctors delivered the devastating news. Paralyzed from the chest down, limited mobility in her neck, would require 24 our care for the rest of her life. Insurance had covered the initial hospitalization and some of the rehabilitation. After that, almost nothing. The Mitchells had burned through their savings in 6 months. The house, paid off years ago when Margaret's parents passed away, was all they had left. And then there was a note at the bottom of the file that made Keanu's blood run cold. Father David Mitchell, filed for divorce 2 months after the accident. No contact with family since. No child support payments. Location unknown. Keanu felt physically sick. Tyler had been 19 years old when his mother's accident happened. 3 weeks before he was supposed to leave for the Culinary Institute of America. 3 weeks before his entire future was supposed to begin. And his father had abandoned them both. Left a 19-year-old kid to care for his paralyzed mother alone. Keanu found Tyler in the walk, in cooler doing inventory with a clipboard and a pen that kept slipping from his trembling fingers. The young man looked worse than usual tonight. Gray-faced, swaying slightly on his feet. The tremors in his hands were getting worse. Tyler. Keanu said his name carefully. No response. The pen scratched across the clipboard. Tyler. The pen stopped. Tyler's shoulders tensed, but he did not turn around. You see the memo. A corporate efficiency memo had been posted on the break room bulletin board that afternoon. Due to restructuring, night shift prep operations would be consolidated into day shifts. Night crew would be reduced to 1 custodial staff member and 1 line cook for late, night orders only. It meant Tyler was going to lose his job. Or worse, be forced onto day shifts, which was impossible with his mother's care needs, which meant he would lose his job anyway. Yeah. Tyler's voice was flat. Dead. I saw it. What are you going to do? What can I do? Tyler finally turned around, and Keanu saw the desperation in his hollow eyes. Find another job, I guess. Hope they have night shifts available. Hope they pay enough. Hope I don't lose the house before I find something. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just broken glass. Hope's worked out great for me so far. Before Keanu could respond, Gordon Briggs' voice boomed across the kitchen. Mitchell! Where the hell are my peppers? I needed them 20 minutes ago! They're coming, chef. Tyler's voice was barely audible. Coming isn't good enough. Gordon stormed into the cooler, red-faced and furious, cheap cologne mixing with the smell of sweat and kitchen grease. You're late on prep. You look like death warmed over. And now I find out corporate's cutting night shift. Gordon sneered. Maybe they're right. Maybe we don't need dead weight around here. Keanu watched Tyler flinch like he had been physically struck. Chef, I'm sorry. I'll get them done faster. You're damn right you will. Gordon grabbed the onions Tyler had been inventorying and examined them with theatrical contempt. Inconsistent cuts. This is amateur work, Mitchell. What happened to you? You used to be good. Tyler's hands were shaking badly now. I'm trying, chef. Try harder. Gordon threw the onions back on the shelf with unnecessary force. I want those peppers and the zucchini done in 30 minutes. And if you can't handle it, maybe you should clock out and not come back. Gordon stormed out, leaving a wake of uncomfortable silence and the faint smell of his overpowering cologne. Keanu watched Tyler's shoulders hunch forward, watched him take a deep breath that did nothing to steady his trembling hands, watched him reach for the peppers with fingers that could barely grip the knife. Tyler. Keanu kept his voice quiet. When's the last time you ate? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. I said I'm fine. Tyler snapped, then immediately looked stricken by his own tone. Sorry? I'm sorry, Mike. I just need to get this done. Keanu watched him work for another 5 minutes. Tyler was spiraling. Anyone could see it. His cuts were getting sloppier. His breathing was shallow and rapid. The tremors in his hands made the knife dangerous. I'm taking my break, Keanu announced. You should too. Can't. Need to finish. Tyler. Break. Now. Something in Keanu's tone, the voice of someone used to being in command, must have cut through Tyler's exhaustion. He set down the knife and followed Keanu to the break room like a sleepwalker. Keanu bought a sandwich from the vending machine and placed it in front of Tyler. Eat. I'm not hungry. Eat it anyway. Tyler picked up the sandwich with shaking hands and took a bite. Then another. Within 2 minutes, he had devoured the entire thing like a starving animal, barely pausing to chew. Keanu bought him a second one without comment. When's the last time you slept? Keanu asked. I don't know. Saturday. Maybe Friday. Tyler rubbed his face with both hands. I had to take Mom to a doctor's appointment Monday during the day. Couldn't sleep before my shift. Then yesterday I had to deal with her insurance company. They're trying to deny her muscle relaxers, saying they're not medically necessary. His voice was rising, cracking with exhaustion and desperation. Have you ever tried to argue with an insurance company? It's like talking to a wall. A heartless, bureaucratic wall that doesn't care if my mother is in pain. He dropped his head into his hands. And now this. The shift cut. I can't work days, Mike. I can't. If I lose this job, we lose the house. If we lose the house, Mom goes into a state facility. Do you know what those places are like? She'll die there. She'll just give up and die. His shoulders started shaking. I can't let that happen. I can't. She's all I have. She's... His voice broke completely. Keanu reached out, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. He wanted to tell Tyler everything would be okay. That help was coming. That Keanu Reeves, the actual owner of this entire restaurant chain, was going to fix this. That Tyler did not have to carry this weight alone anymore. But he could not. Not yet. Not without blowing his cover and potentially making everything worse. You're going to get through this, Keanu said instead, his voice firm with conviction. I promise you, Tyler, you're going to be okay. Tyler laughed wetly into his hands. Yeah, sure. The break room door swung open. Gordon again. Of course, Mitchell. Break's over. Those vegetables aren't going to prep themselves. Move it. Tyler wiped his face quickly and stood, swaying slightly. Keanu watched him walk back into the kitchen on unsteady legs. Watched him pick up the knife with hands that trembled so badly he nearly dropped it. And then, at 4:30, 7 in the morning, Keanu found him. He had been checking the inventory in the dry goods pantry when he spotted a shape on the floor behind the rice bags. Tyler was curled up on his side, chef's coat bunched under his head as a makeshift pillow. His face was peaceful for the first time since Keanu had met him. The tension lines smoothed away. The hollow look temporarily erased. Dead asleep, his body had finally overridden his will. Keanu pulled out his phone and took a photograph. Not to shame him, not as evidence, but to remember this moment. To remember why this mattered. To never forget the cost of being invisible. Then, he gently draped his own jacket over Tyler's sleeping form and stood guard at the pantry door, making sure nobody disturbed him. Some rest was worth protecting, even if it only lasted an hour. Keanu ended his undercover assignment Friday morning. He had spent the last 3 days putting pieces together, making calls, pulling strings. The plan was set. Now came the hardest part. The reveal. Corporate had arranged everything. As far as Tyler knew, he had been selected for a random employee experience interview at the regional office. Standard corporate stuff that happened all the time. HR had told him it was nothing to worry about. Just share your thoughts about working at Second Chance Kitchen. Maybe get featured in some internal newsletter. They had even sent a car for him. Keanu watched from the control room as Tyler entered the studio space they had set up to look like a professional conference room. The young man looked terrified. He was wearing khakis and a button-up shirt that was slightly too big. Probably borrowed or thrifted for this occasion. His hair was combed neatly. He had shaved. But the dark circles under his eyes were still there. Still permanent. He doesn't know, Keanu asked Rachel Thompson, his head of HR, who stood beside him watching the monitors. No clue. He thinks this is a standard interview with our employee satisfaction team. She glanced at Keanu with concern. Are you sure about this? The cameras, the production crew. It's a lot to spring on someone. He deserves to have his story told. Keanu's voice was firm, and I need him to understand that what happens next isn't charity. It's recognition. It's what he's earned. Rachel nodded, though she still looked uncertain. Whenever you're ready, boss. Keanu took a deep breath, straightened the tie he had not worn in days. His real clothes, not Mike Cooper's coveralls. He walked toward the studio door. Inside, Tyler sat at a table across from two producers holding clipboards. They were asking him soft questions. How long have you worked for Second Chance Kitchen? What do you like about the job? Standard stuff designed to make him comfortable. Tyler was answering politely, hands folded on the table, clearly nervous but trying his best. He kept glancing at the cameras positioned around the room, probably wondering why a simple employee interview needed such elaborate equipment. Keanu waited in the hallway, listening through his earpiece. His heart was pounding harder than it had in years. Harder than any film premiere, harder than any major business deal. Because this mattered more. Okay, Tyler, just a few more questions, one of the producers said pleasantly. We're going to bring in someone from upper management to chat with you. Nothing scary, I promise. Just want to get a leadership perspective on your experience. Sure, Tyler said quietly. That's fine. Keanu received the cue through his earpiece. He pushed open the door and walked in. Tyler glanced up casually, then did a double take so sharp he nearly fell out of his chair. Mike. His voice cracked with confusion. Why are you dressed like? Tyler's eyes darted between Keanu and the cameras, panic rising visibly. Is this about the other night? When I fell asleep in the pantry? I swear it won't happen again. I was just exhausted and Tyler, stop. Keanu moved closer, hands raised in a calming gesture. You're not in trouble. Then what is this? Who are you? Keanu took a breath. My name isn't Mike Cooper. He paused, letting the words settle. It's Keanu Reeves. I'm the CEO and founder of Second Chance Kitchen. The color drained from Tyler's face so fast it was almost visible. His mouth opened but no sound came out. I spent the last week working undercover in our Cincinnati location. Keanu continued, watching emotions flash across Tyler's face. Confusion. Betrayal. Fear. I wanted to understand what was really happening in our restaurants. What corporate doesn't see from the outside. And then I met you. Tyler stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a screech. You followed me. His voice was shaking now. You came to my house. You saw? He swallowed hard. You had no right. No, right, You're absolutely correct. Keanu's voice was steady. Sincere. I invaded your privacy, and I apologize for that. But Tyler, what I saw. What you're doing for your mother. I couldn't walk away. So what? Tyler's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You're going to fire me now. Tell me I'm a liability because I fell asleep one time. Because I'm not efficient enough for your corporate mandates. His voice broke. Go ahead. Add it to the list of things that have gone wrong in my life. Tyler, I gave up? Everything? The words exploded out of him. Raw. Desperate. 3 years of pain and sacrifice erupting like a dam breaking. Everything. And I'd do it again, okay? I'd do it 1,000 times. Because she's my mom. And she's all I have. And I don't care if you think I'm not good enough for your restaurant. I don't care if. I think you're extraordinary. Tyler stopped mid-breath. He stared at Keanu like he had just spoken a foreign language. What? Keanu moved closer. His voice was soft but filled with conviction. You work a full night shift, drive an hour each way, care for your mother around the clock, and somehow still show up every single night to do your job with precision and dedication. You sacrificed a full scholarship to one of the best culinary schools in the world. You've been doing this for 3 years with no help, no support, no recognition. He paused. That's not a liability, Tyler. That's the definition of strength. Tyler's eyes were glistening now. His anger was deflating into something more vulnerable. something he had clearly been hiding for 3 long years. "Then why are you here?" His voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" Keanu smiled gently. "I don't want anything from you, son. I'm here to give you something back." "I don't understand." "You will." Keanu gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit down." "Let me explain." Tyler sank into his chair slowly. He looked like he might bolt at any moment. His hands were trembling again, not from exhaustion this time, but from adrenaline and fear and confusion all tangled together. Keanu sat across from him, hands folded on the table, meeting his eyes directly. "Tyler Mitchell, for the past 3 years, you've carried an impossible weight without complaint. You've put your mother's life before your own dreams. You've worked yourself to the bone and never asked anyone for help." Keanu's voice was thick with emotion. "But you don't have to do this alone anymore." "What are you talking about?" Keanu leaned forward. "I'm talking about changing your life. If you'll let me." Tyler stared at him. Tears were sliding silently down his cheeks now, too overwhelmed to speak. And for the first time in 3 years, Keanu saw something flicker in those exhausted, hollow eyes. Hope. The paperwork took 2 weeks to finalize. Keanu had wanted to move faster, but his legal team insisted on doing everything properly. Contracts, liability waivers, medical authorizations, a dozen other documents that needed signatures and notarizations and official stamps. Tyler had been in a daze since the reveal. Keanu had laid out the plan that day in the studio, and the young man had listened in stunned silence. Second Chance Kitchen would cover Margaret's medical expenses for a full year, including medications, equipment, physical therapy, and home care services. The company's education fund would enroll Tyler in an accredited online culinary degree program through Johnson & Wales University, and he would be promoted to assistant prep lead with flexible hours that actually accommodated his caregiving responsibilities. Tyler had cried, not quiet tears, deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere profound and broken inside him. The sound of someone finally allowed to set down a weight they had been carrying alone for far too long. Keanu had let him cry, had handed him tissues, because some moments needed to happen without words. But the real moment, the one Keanu had been planning carefully, was today. He pulled up to 1240, 7 Maple Street at 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday, accompanied by Rachel Thompson and Daniel Foster, Second Chance Kitchen's chief operations officer. They brought folders of documents and a certified check that made Keanu's accountant nervous. But some things were worth more than money. Tyler opened the door before they could knock. He looked better than Keanu had ever seen him. The dark circles were still there, but lighter. His eyes were clearer. His posture was straighter. He had actually slept the past 2 nights. Really slept. Because a home care nurse named Christina now came from 9 in the evening to 7 in the morning, paid for by Second Chance Kitchen. Mr. Reeves. Tyler still looked uncomfortable with the formality. "Please, come in. Mom's been asking about you." The living room looked different in daylight. The medical equipment was still there. That would not change. But there were fresh flowers on the windowsill now. Bright yellow daisies. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. The room felt less like a hospital and more like a home. Margaret Mitchell sat in a new wheelchair, also courtesy of Second Chance Kitchen, positioned near the window where she could see the autumn colors on Maple Street. She wore a lavender cardigan and had her hair styled nicely. The cervical collar was gone, replaced by a smaller, more comfortable neck brace. When she saw Keanu, her face lit up with a smile that reminded him exactly where Tyler got his kindness. "Mr. Reeves." Her voice was soft but clearer than he had expected. "Tyler's told me what you're doing for us. I don't have words to express tone." She trailed off, tears already forming. Keanu pulled up a chair and sat at her eye level. "Mrs. Mitchell, your son is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. What I'm doing isn't charity. It's recognition of someone who embodies everything Second Chance Kitchen is supposed to stand for." Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks. He gave up so much for me. His school. His dreams. I wanted to die after the accident. Wanted to just let go and stop being a burden. But Tyler wouldn't let me. She smiled through her tears. He kept fighting. For both of us. He learned that from you, Keanu said gently. Margaret laughed softly. Maybe I raised him too strong. I just wish he didn't have to be this strong. He won't have to be. Not anymore. Keanu nodded to Rachel, who opened her folder and began laying out documents on the table beside Margaret's wheelchair. Mrs. Mitchell. Tyler? Keanu shifted into business mode because this part needed to be crystal clear. Here's exactly what we've arranged. He paused, making sure both of them were listening. First, medical expenses. All of Margaret's care costs, medications, equipment, doctor visits, and physical therapy are covered for the next 12 months. After that, we'll reassess and extend as needed. Tyler made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That's almost $40,000. It's an investment. Keanu corrected. In someone who deserves it. Second, home care. Christina will continue on the night shift, and we're adding a part-time day nurse named Melissa. She'll come 3 days a week to help with physical therapy and give Tyler actual breaks. Margaret's hand trembled on the armrest of her wheelchair. I can't believe this is real, she whispered. It's real, Keanu assured her. Third, education. Tyler, you're enrolled in Johnson & Wales University's online culinary arts bachelor's program. All tuition, fees, and materials are covered. You'll start January term, which gives you 6 weeks to prepare. I don't know what to say, Tyler managed. Say you'll work hard and make us proud. Keanu smiled. Fourth, your position. You're being promoted to assistant prep lead at our Columbus location. It's 30 minutes closer to home, and the salary is increased to $48,000 a year plus full benefits. Your schedule will be flexible. You work when you can, around your mother's needs and your classes. Daniel Foster stepped forward with the final document. And lastly, he said, placing a check on the table, this is a one-time grant of $15,000 for home modifications and any other immediate needs. Tyler stared at the check, like it might disappear if he blinked. This is too much. I can't accept this. You can, Keanu said firmly. And you will, because you've earned it, Tyler. Every single bit of it. Margaret was crying openly now. Tyler moved to her side, kneeling beside her wheelchair. She could not hug him. Her arms would not cooperate. But she leaned her head against his, and they stayed like that for a long moment. Mother and son. Survivors. Thank you, Margaret finally whispered, looking at Keanu through her tears. Thank you for seeing my boy. For really seeing him. Keanu felt his own throat tighten. He's hard to miss. Once you know where to look. As Keanu prepared to leave an hour later, Tyler walked him to the door. Mr. Reeves, he said quietly. Why? Really, why? There are thousands of employees in your company. Why me? Keanu paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I spent 20 years building restaurants, and somewhere along the way, I forgot they're built by people. Real people with real struggles and real dreams. He put a hand on Tyler's shoulder. You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Not for profit, not for expansion, but to give people second chances. His eyes met Tyler's. Don't waste this opportunity. Not for me. Not for your mother. For yourself. You deserve to be the chef you were always meant to be. Tyler nodded, eyes bright with unshaded tears. I won't let you down. I know you won't, son. Keanu smiled. I've seen you at 3 in the morning, chopping vegetables alone in the dark. If that's not dedication, I don't know what is. But there was one more piece of business to handle. The following Monday, Keanu walked into the Cincinnati location unannounced. No disguise this time. No coveralls. No baseball cap hiding his famous hair. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, and everyone in the restaurant recognized him immediately. Whispers spread through the staff like wildfire. As that? Oh my God, that's actually... Keanu Reeves is here. Keanu Reeves. Gordon Briggs came rushing out of the kitchen, red-faced as always, but now with a nervous smile plastered across his features. "Mr. Reeves! Sir, what an honor! If I'd known you were coming, I would have." Gordon. Keanu's voice was ice-cold. "My office. Now." The color drained from Gordon's face. "Seer. Now." They walked to the manager's office in silence. Keanu closed the door behind them. "I've spent the past 2 weeks reviewing this location's operations." Keanu began, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made Gordon visibly sweat. "And I've discovered some troubling patterns. Mr. Reeves, I can explain." "Let me finish." Gordon's mouth snapped shut. "I found an employee working the night shift alone. Every single night. Doing the prep work of 3 people because you refused to properly staff the kitchen." Keanu's eyes bore into Gordon's. "I found a young man so exhausted he fell asleep in the pantry. And instead of asking why, instead of showing an ounce of compassion, you screamed at him in front of his coworkers, called him dead weight, threatened his job." Gordon opened his mouth to protest. "I also reviewed security footage from the past 6 months." Keanu continued. "You've verbally abused multiple employees. You've created a hostile work environment. You've driven away more talented people than I can count." He leaned forward. "Tyler Mitchell is one of the most skilled and dedicated employees I've ever encountered. Full scholarship to the Culinary Institute of America. 3 years of perfect attendance despite circumstances that would have broken most people. And you treated him like garbage." Gordon's face had gone from red to white. "I didn't know about his situation." "That's exactly the problem." Keanu's voice was sharp. "You didn't know because you didn't care to know. You didn't ask. You didn't listen. You just demanded and threatened and bullied." He stood up. "Gordon Briggs, you're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 30 minutes to leave the premises." "You can't do this," Gordon sputtered. "I've been here for 8 years. I've given everything to this company." "You've given everything to your own ego," Keanu corrected. "And you've taken everything from the people who actually make this restaurant run." He opened the office door. "30 minutes, Gordon. Don't make security drag you out." As Gordon stumbled past him, red-faced and sputtering, Keanu addressed the staff who had gathered nearby. "From today forward, things change at this location," he announced, his voice carrying across the restaurant. "Every employee will be treated with dignity and respect. Anyone who has concerns can reach out directly to our HR department without fear of retaliation." He paused. Second Chance Kitchen was built on the belief that everyone deserves respect. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. I forgot that. His eyes swept across the gathered faces. I'm not going to forget again. 6 months later, the Columbus location of Second Chance Kitchen was Keanu's proudest achievement. Not the biggest restaurant in the chain, not the most profitable, but the most meaningful. Every detail had been chosen with intention. The open kitchen design let customers watch their meals being prepared. A community board near the entrance displayed job opportunities and resources for people in need. A scholarship fund poster announced culinary grants for deserving students. And today, it was finally opening. Keanu stood near the ribbon stretched across the entrance, straightening his jacket for the 3rd time. A crowd had gathered. Press, local officials, corporate staff, community members curious about the new restaurant. But Keanu's eyes kept drifting to the parking lot. Then he saw it. Tyler's Honda Civic, cleaner and better maintained than before, pulling into a reserved spot near the entrance. Tyler emerged first. He was wearing a chef's coat, but not the standard white one. A sharp black coat with his name embroidered on the chest in elegant silver thread. Chef Tyler Mitchell, assistant kitchen director. He had filled out over the past 6 months. The gauntness was gone. The dark circles had faded. He looked healthy. He looked young again. But Keanu's attention shifted to the passenger side. Tyler was carefully helping someone out of the car. Margaret Mitchell, sitting in her wheelchair, looked radiant. Her hair was professionally styled. She wore a blue dress that matched her kind eyes. The neck brace was smaller now, less restrictive. Physical therapy and proper medical care had made a real difference. And behind them, Christina, the night nurse, was pushing a second wheelchair carrying an elderly woman with white hair and Margaret's nose. Grandma Eleanor, flown in from Arizona for the occasion. "Sorry we're late," Tyler called out, slightly breathless as he pushed his mother toward the entrance. "Traffic on 71 was crazy. You're right on time," Keanu said warmly, shaking Tyler's hand and then bending down to Margaret's level. "Amishes. Mitchell, you look beautiful. Thank you for being here. I wouldn't miss this for the world," Margaret said, her voice stronger than it had been 6 months ago. "My son opening a restaurant with Keanu Reeves. I still can't believe it's real." "Believe it?" Keanu said with a grin. The crowd quieted as Keanu stepped up to the microphone. Cameras clicked. News crews adjusted their angles. But Keanu kept his focus on Tyler, who stood beside his mother with one hand resting on her wheelchair. "Thank you all for coming," Keanu began. "6 months ago, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went undercover in one of my own restaurants. I wanted to understand what was really happening on the ground level. What corporate doesn't see from the outside." He paused. "What I found changed everything." He gestured to Tyler. "I found a young man working the night shift alone, chopping vegetables at 3 in the morning in a quiet, empty kitchen. I found someone who had sacrificed a full scholarship to the Culinary Institute of America to care for his mother after a devastating accident. Someone who worked himself to exhaustion every single night, never complaining, never asking for help, just doing what needed to be done." Margaret reached up and squeezed Tyler's hand. He squeezed back, blinking hard. "Tyler Mitchell reminded me why I started Second Chance Kitchen 20 years ago." Keanu continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Not to build an empire, not to maximize profits, but to create places where good food and good people come together, where hard work is recognized, where dreams don't have to die because life gets hard." He paused, looking directly at Tyler. 6 months ago, Tyler was surviving. Today, he's thriving. He's completed 2 semesters of his culinary degree with a 4.0 GPA. He's become an integral part of our Columbus team. And today, as assistant kitchen director, he's helping open a restaurant that will serve this community and provide opportunities for others like him. The crowd applauded. Keanu picked up the oversized ceremonial scissors and handed them to Tyler. "I think you should do the honors." "Me?" Tyler's eyes went wide. "But this is your restaurant." "No!" Keanu shook his head. "This is our restaurant, and it starts with you." Tyler took the scissors with hands that were steady now. Steady and strong. "Before I cut this ribbon," Tyler said, his voice carrying across the crowd, "I want to say something." He looked at Keanu. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd used up all my chances, all my hope. I was drowning and didn't even know how to ask for help." His voice cracked slightly. "Mr. Reeves saw me, really saw me, and he didn't just give me a paycheck or a promotion. He gave me my future back." He turned to his mother. "Mom, you always told me that good things happen to good people. I stopped believing that after the accident, but I believe it again now." Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud." Tyler positioned the scissors on the ribbon. "This restaurant isn't just about food. It's about second chances, about not giving up, even when everything feels impossible, and about the people who see us when we're invisible." He cut the ribbon in one smooth motion. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Music began playing from inside the restaurant. Staff members opened the doors, welcoming the first guests. But Keanu stayed focused on Tyler, who had knelt down beside his mother's wheelchair. They were talking quietly, foreheads nearly touching, in their own private moment amidst the celebration. Then Tyler stood, took a deep breath, and headed into the kitchen. His kitchen, where his team was waiting, ready for service, ready to create, ready to feed people and build community, and do what he was always meant to do. Keanu followed the crowd inside, but paused at the entrance. He pulled out his phone and looked at a photograph he had saved from 6 months ago. Tyler asleep in the pantry, exhausted and alone, using his chef's coat as a pillow. Then he looked through the open kitchen window at Tyler now, calling out orders, leading his team, moving with confidence and purpose and joy. Keanu smiled and deleted the old photograph. He did not need it anymore, because sometimes the best stories were not about how far someone had fallen. They were about how high they could rise when someone believed in them. Keanu stepped up to the microphone one last time as the crowd settled inside the restaurant. "Before we eat," he said, his voice carrying through the packed space, "I want to leave you with one thought." He paused, looking out at the faces before him. Sometimes the strongest leaders aren't the ones at the top. They're the ones who keep going when no one's watching. They're the ones who make sacrifices nobody sees. They're the people chopping vegetables at 3 in the morning because someone they love needs them too. He raised his glass. To Tyler Mitchell, to second chances, and to remembering that behind every employee, every worker, every person we pass by, there's a story worth hearing. The crowd raised their glasses. To second chances. As everyone drank, Keanu caught Tyler's eye through the kitchen window. The young chef smiled, not the tired, hollow smile from 6 months ago. Something bright, something real, something full of possibility. Tyler mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Keanu nodded once, feeling his chest swell with emotion. "No," he thought. "Thank you for reminding me what really matters. Thank you for following this story." Let us know in the comments below. If this story has moved you and you'd like to stand with us in bringing more voices of truth and hope to light, please consider supporting our work. Even the smallest gift helps us continue creating and sharing these powerful stories. You can find the donate link in the description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter we're preparing for you.